Hello and welcome to another episode of our podcast, Fear Less, Do More. Today we're joined by the very interesting Dr. Chris Ferguson, who is the Museum and Experience Director at Ad Gefrin, an Anglo-Saxon museum and whisky distillery. And for all of you historians and lovers of Northumberland, this one is most definitely for you.
It's the first site you're taught about. You do something with Anglo-Saxon archaeology, that field in North Northumberland is the first site that you're taught about. We focus very much on the role of women in that period, rather than it just being kings and battles. It's much more about how's the queen operating the court, because actually she's the one that's making the place one. How are the other levels of society present in that? Because it's not just about royalty, it's actually about everyone who makes that place work. Because it was the Hill of the Goats, because Cheviot goats, goats sort of figure in all of the things we do, we decided to build a 6-metre high goat out of straw.
As you do.
As you do.
Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
It's lovely to have you here from one of my favourite places in Northumberland, not least because it does a brilliant cheese scone.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the most important thing.
It is. I mean, you can tell the quality of somewhere by the quality of its scones, I feel.
It's the old National Trust maxim of like the quality of the cheese scones and the quality of the toilet. It's what everybody judges you on.
We had somebody on from Beamish who was telling us they'd won Toilet of the Year.
Do you know what? It's a really prestigious award.
Is it?
So, yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The architect we used for it won Toilet of the Year for the toilet seat at Gibbside, and it was part of the reason we chose him. It's literally Toilet of the Year. Because it's...
Right. Well, we've kicked this off with
I
something I didn't know about. That's great. I mean, you're here from Ad Gefrin.
Yes.
For people who don't know what Ad Gefrin is, can you just give us a sort of little summary?
Yes. So Ad Gefrin, Anglo-Saxon Museum and Whisky Distillery. So we are in Wooler in North Northumberland. We tell the story of ancient Ad Gefrin, which was the royal palace of the kings and queens of Northumbria in the 7th century, so 1400 years ago, just up in the foothills of Cheviots. Never had its story told. So we tell the story of the archaeology, do that in a way that I think is really exciting for people coming. And then we are also the Northeast's only single malt whiskey distillery. And we have a bistro and we have a shop, because that's important.
Yeah, one-stop shop for all of your cultural and culinary needs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how did this come about, this merging of Anglo-Saxon history with whiskey?
Mainly because we're a family business. So that's the thing that I think makes us unique in an awful lot of ways in all the things we do. So my parents, my dad and my stepmom, actually our family as a whole has been in haulage and logistics going back 4 generations, going back to the sort of 1920s on both sides. When my dad and my stepmom married, the businesses were merging at the same time. And this was a site of Redpaths. It was an agricultural haulage yard. And in the 1990s, we stopped doing agricultural haulage. And so it's been derelict. It was derelict ever since then. And about 2018, we were sat as a family around a lunch. And my parents kind of had this idea about a whiskey distillery side of things. And I said, is anybody else interested? And I'm an archaeologist. I was working in cultural stuff at the time. It's like, oh, this sounds fun. Very quickly, in the first sort of week of me and my stepmom Eileen sitting around the table, we sort of came up with the idea of we'll do the museum and we'll do the distillery. And those things kind of make it a celebration of Northumbrianness. So it kind of is the product of sort of me, my stepmom, my dad, my sister's work in it as well now. And it's a sort of, it wouldn't exist without bits of passion and bits of interest from all of us.
So a sort of a merging of passions around whiskey and history.
Yeah.
You're a historian.
He is.
And your background is in
archaeology.
Archaeology. And a particular period of
Anglo-Saxon archaeology. So Ad Gefrin was part of what I worked on for my PhD, weirdly. Right. So this was that sort of period of archaeology and history has always just been something I've been really interested in. And I think it's partly in the story that we tell with it, it is our region's story. It's where that sort of sense of Northumbrian identity and community stuff comes from, the way that they lived then, the way that they acted in the Great Hall, the way that communities would come together. That whole thing about Northumbrian hospitality, if you like, come around, have a cup of tea, sit down, it starts there. But we haven't really talked about it that much. It's kind of that, it's a fundamental bit of Northumbrian identity, yet you're not taught it at school.
Yeah.
And you couldn't find out about it. You couldn't find the archaeology anywhere. You couldn't find the history anywhere. And that's what always got me interested in it. And now it's kind of more, I have the opportunity to tell that story and bring that passion life for other people.
Yeah. Did you know that site was an important part of the history through the work that you'd done?
Yeah, well, the weird thing about it, so my grandparents had a house not far from there, which we used to go to at weekends. And I used to go to that field with my grandma. And because I was just interested in it. It had a sign by the side of the road, and that's all it had. And I was always, as a kid, I was like, oh, it's a nice place to go for a walk, and you walk up the hill. And then never thought about it particularly again other than that until I went to uni, and I went to do my master's degree on Anglo-Saxon archaeology. And it's the first site you're taught about. You do something with Anglo-Saxon archaeology, that field in North Northumberland is the first site that you're taught about, because it was the first one to be excavated. It's a royal palace. It's internationally significant.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if you lived in Wooler sort of 5 years ago, you wouldn't have known it. And I think that's the bit of kind of making people aware of how significant it is.
And as an archaeologist, that must be really rewarding to be uncovering something that hasn't been talked about in the region that it's in for such a long time.
Well, it is, and it's also it is. It's really rewarding to just bring it alive to people, so people become aware of it. It's also really interesting. It was excavated, it was rediscovered in the 1950s and 1960s, and it had a very particular way of understanding the site as a result. So a very sort of 60s mindset to it. So we got the opportunity as well to sort of retell the story, look at other aspects of it. You know, we focus very much on the role of women in that period, rather than it just being kings and battles. It's much more about how's the queen operating the court, because actually she's the one that's making the place run. How are the other levels of society present in that? Because it's not just about royalty, it's actually about everyone who makes that place work, and they're only king and queen because those people allow them and acclaim them to be. So you need everybody else to be part of that.
Yeah. So it's a real storytelling piece behind that, and you've had the opportunity to sort of not reinterpret what happened, but just tell a different side of the story that people haven't seen before. Yeah,
something that's a bit more, well, a bit more interesting, a bit more exciting, but also just a bit more, feels relevant for people.
Yeah.
Feels like people when you're trying to understand what does it mean for us today.
Yeah.
Looking back at the past. I think that's the thing that I find interesting about archaeology, about history, and it's about what we can learn for ourselves from understanding how people lived in the past.
And I love that idea of, that this is where, everybody talks about Geordie hospitality, and the region is known for being very welcoming place. To have that real connection right back to the roots of, well, that's where that came from. I think it's a lovely way to think about it, and it's a lovely insight into what things were like before modern day. It's
that thread as well as to, the question is always, why are you doing whiskey when you're doing Anglo-Saxon stuff? Is, well, actually that hospitality, that bringing people together is part of it. And also that you only have the ability to build a large royal palace and to have all those people there because actually Northumberland's really great farmland. You can grow barley and rye, and you can keep your cattle, and you can keep your sheep, and you can keep your goats, and you can do all of those things, which means you can feed a big community. And we're talking like a big community at that point, thousands of people coming together for months at a time. And that's what takes you on to being able to, it's still the same farmland we have now. And it's that sort of appreciating the landscape that we live in and what you can actually make from it.
Yeah. So if we go back to sort of when you had this idea.
Yeah.
But actually having an idea and making it become a reality is not as easy as just sort of like, oh, okay, well, we'll build something.
Yeah.
So tell us about that journey. How did you get it going?
We had the idea in 2018.
Yeah.
And so very rapidly, for a large part of time, I was still working down in York. It was myself and my stepmom round the table for most of that summer of 2018, just the two of us sort of doing it on a weekend, doing it on an evening, writing funding bids, building business plans, working with the architect to get some designs, And we went out to consult them at the Glendale show, which is the large agricultural show just outside of Woolley, on August bank holiday of 2018. So between April and August, we had a sort of set of architectural concepts. We'd done work on the initial brand, what we might look like, and a bit of the story in the feel, so that we could sort of we talked to over 5,000 people in a weekend about the idea of what we were going to do, which was a lot of people to talk to all at once. And everybody was really receptive because it was a really derelict, horrible site on the outside of Woolley. And then went through, we managed to get grant funding from the Borderlands growth deal, the Northumberland County Council and the North East LEP, as it was then, which gave us sort of 50% of the funding to build the building. And that's it. That was our grant funding. But that all happened right as we were heading into COVID.
Just when you want to open a visitor centre.
Yeah, exactly. Just when you want to be sort of starting to build stuff and do all that stuff. So we were ready to go, and then lockdown happened. So we then we lost about just over a year before basically we started, and then stopped. Just went on full pause and didn't start again until February 21, and then opened in March 23.
So that moment when the sort of spades went into the ground.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
That was really exciting, and I think the whole process was probably quite emotional for all the family with sort of making it and creating it. It had always been, part, again, because it's all family and it's all connected with it. It partly had been my stepmom's vision to create something there. For my dad, it was giving back. For me, it was sort of realizing that vision with them and working with it. So when we started taking the buildings down that were there previously and reworking them, that moment was quite, I think, emotionally heavy, because there was a lot of memories for a lot of people tied up with that site. The day when the stills arrived, so once we were building and the stills arrived, and we sort of did a parade down the high street, and we had this sort of home with the kids, and it was incredibly poignant. This is very much my stepmom's story for her, around Grandpa John, her dad, passed away just around that time. So it was a really kind of, it's been a really significant sort of part of everybody's life. And I think that's the thing you only get from being a family business. Yeah, it's all consuming, isn't it? Because you're all in it together, and it impacts every part of what you're doing every day. I mean, for people who haven't been, it's a spectacular building. Yeah. And it's an award-winning building, and the architecture is beautiful. The quality of what you've done is incredible, and it's also a very sustainable building. Just for somebody who hasn't been, give us a sort of describe what it's like, because I'll get it wrong if I try and do it. So the brief that we gave our architect and what we wanted to create was something that was inspired by the 7th century, inspired by those royal palaces, but also was contemporary and was timeless, and was a fitting home for the Northeast's only single malt whiskey. So it's all very much inspired by timber. It was a timber world 400 years ago, tactile materials, copper that you use in the whiskey making as well. So we have a large atrium moment when you come in, a staircase, it's all pine and oak in there. We have the museum and the Great Hall upstairs. So we've recreated the interior of one of the Great Halls from the palace site in the 7th century, and people come forward and tell you their story. We have our team members in costume from the period as well. So they tell you sort of different aspects of the story. Objects in the museum from both the site and the excavations there, but loans from the British Museum, the Society of Antiquaries in Newcastle, the Duke of Northumberland, stuff that gives you context from Northumbria. And then we have this large, you go from there on the distillery tour into the distillery itself, which is a very open space, sort of celebrating the whiskey making process in there. I said we won the sort of Northeast Reba Awards and things for the design that Richard Elphick created for it. And all of that brief to him was that sort of tactile nature of it, that it was somewhere that felt timeless. It felt like it was lived in already. So it's that kind of thing of when you go there, it feels like it's been there a long time, but it also feels really contemporary. It's a really interesting bit of architecture for that. There's no plasterboard walls. There's no smooth surfaces. Everything has a sort of almost arts and crafts feel to it. So we have lots of bits of tactile brick or bits of timber or that sort of thing as you go around. So it's very trying to channel that hospitality thing.
Yeah.
Like it's somewhere you feel like you can go and you can sit down by the fire and you can just be be there for however long you want to be there.
I mean, that's one of my favourite bits of it actually, is that you've got two great big hob chairs next to a great big fire, but saying that doesn't convey the feeling that you have in there. And it's an incredible building, and it does have that real sense of warmth and authenticity about it. And I mean, obviously the Great Hall recreation, that presume that is your baby.
Yeah.
How authentic is it in terms of what's presented?
Do you know what? It was one of the most fun things I've done in my career, because when you're trying to be an archaeologist or you're trying to be a historian, you do that sort of thing. It's very academic. And you'll appreciate this from some of it's very, you read the books, you do the stuff, you write the things down. But then once you're recreating it in a space for visitors, for the public to come in and enjoy, you have to challenge yourself to think about, what did it look like? What did it feel like? What did it smell like? Because in the archaeology you have from the site, it's timber buildings. So you have post holes. You have literally the holes where the posts went to hold the building up.
Yeah.
Right? And the walls. What you don't have is, what colour was the wall? What fabric was on the wall? What did the roof look like? That sort of stuff. What was the furniture? So you have to create all of that with a story in there. So I talked to a lot of sort of leading academics. There just had been a book out when we were creating it by John Blair, who was at Oxford, on building Anglo-Saxon England. So it was source material we could pull on with people who've been thinking a bit about it. So we based it as much as we can on the sort of material we can get hold of, but you still have to kind of have this creating something that people are going to enjoy, and create it with as much integrity as you can, and be honest about what we don't know and what we've had to kind of fill in the gaps and be creative about.
I like the fact that you've got sort of Anglo-Saxon games that you can play in there. You've got the sort of recreations of the thrones, or it's every sort of detail has been thought about.
Everything. So if you go in there and you sit on those thrones, or you sit at the tables and on the benches and play the games stuff, they are all archaeologically found things somewhere in Anglo-Saxon England, or in the case of the thrones, they're based on ones from 7th century France, but there's a connection there. They're the types of things that you would have seen. So it's to give you a feeling, as somebody, a contemporary person walking into that space, is to get across that feeling of what Anglo-Saxon Northumbrian might have been like, to allow you to then look at archaeology and go to an empty field and go, I can see it, I can imagine it. Because otherwise, it's from a set of archaeological plans or a museum display case, it's really hard to get that across. So that's everything's kind of rooted in an object that has been found, but we've put it together in a way to kind of create an emotional reaction, a feeling from it.
Fear Less, Do More is brought to you by the team at Square One Law. If you're enjoying this episode, hit follow or subscribe. It really helps us out, and it means that you won't miss out on any future episodes. We have some great fearless guests that leave you feeling really inspired. And if you think someone else would enjoy it too, feel free to pass it on, whether that's a mate, a colleague, or someone in your network. Thanks for listening. Now back to the conversation.
So what's been your proudest moment so far?
That's a good question. I think the proudest moment with it all, one was actually on opening day, when we opened to the public. We had everybody there, and people seeing it for the first time. And going with that, actually, is the reaction even we get now for people who discover it for the first time, who will make comments to, I just can't believe like the quality of this that's in Northumberland, or the finish of it, or they just have a great experience and they come back. And the most important thing is they say how wonderful one of the team members were, or I had a great time with so-and-so. Yeah. They were great on the tour, or they were great in the bistro. It's a family business, yes, but we are only there because of the team that make it happen and give and actually live that that welcome and that warmth at every time. Yeah. Even, whether someone's the first time through the door or they've been 100 times, the team are still as like amazing with each and every person. You can't buy that, you can't create that. That's genuinely just the people that they are.
Yeah, and they're absolutely passionate. I mean, when you go there, their customer service is exemplary, but their knowledge is incredible as well. You can ask anybody in there anything about any aspect of the building, and they know it. They're passionate about it, and it comes through.
And they want to know more all the time. It was one of the things when we did the recruitment for it all. We sort of did it as like speed dating and roundtable when we first opened, because we had to appoint a lot of people, and it was all about the attitude. That was the primary thing.
Right.
Everybody that we met was actually just, could they sit and do what we're doing now? Can they actually just have a bit of a chat with people?
Yeah.
You can train everything else into them. But you almost don't need to with them, because they've got so much passion about working there. They're off finding it out for themselves.
Yeah.
And they come back and check that it's right and stuff. And that's honestly the most rewarding thing about the whole lot, is that team is so passionate about it.
That's brilliant that you said that, because I thought that, that it might have been around the awards that you've won, because you've won lots of tourism awards and things. But actually that, and I think that probably comes from the sort of family business ethos. It's about the people. It's about the impact that you're making. I mean, you're a big employer now in Northumberland.
Yeah.
There aren't huge cities up there and towns so it's your contribution to the societal aspect of Northumberland is quite big.
I think the thing with it as well, and why the things connect, and where it is for the family as a whole, is that sort of giving back part of it. And the conversations we were having sometime about doing good with business. Like that's the point, is we're there to be there for a long time. This isn't a distillery that's just kind of there and sold and gone, or owned by a big multinational or something like that. We are part of that community, and we care, and it take, they're long-term businesses, whiskey distilleries. You're in decade life cycles of your product development.
Yes, it's lots of whiskey. I mean, that's something that I think, until I'd been around, because I'd never been in a whiskey distillery until I came to Ad Gefrin, I didn't realise how long it takes to actually be able to call a whiskey a whiskey.
There's a whole lot of stuff around. So English whiskey is a new category outside of Scotch whiskey, and we are just on this side of the border. It's got to be in a cask for at least 3 years before it's even technically single malt whiskey. But you want to leave it for, until it's ready. It's about a quality point with that. And so you're in sort of 5-year, 10-year life cycles of products. So it means when you're then planning about employment, when you're planning about building the building, when you're planning about that sort of stuff, you have to do it on that life cycle as well. So it's like when we came back to the architecture of the building, it was designed with a 100-year life cycle in mind at least. It should be something that's just permanently there. Yeah. Which is about the sustainability side as well. That's how we should be buildings anyway. But so many contemporary buildings are built with a 20-year expectation or shorter now, which isn't great for the environment, isn't great for design, isn't helpful. Whereas this, we're there for, it's been built to last way more than that. And things like the stills themselves, they have a 50-year lifespan on them. Right. But we've planned into the building design how to change them. Okay. Because we want the building, we know the building should be there, so we want that to be there. I mean, if I see it, I'll be amazed, but so I'll be probably wheeled around in my wheelchair to see those stills being changed.
I'm sure you'll be there. The Northumberland air will keep you going. And the family thing sort of runs through all of it, because even the way that you've approached your visitors and your members, you've done that on creating a family, creating a community around it. Can you just talk a little bit about the Corenkyn, Corengyst?
Yeah. I mean, so one of the things we do is everything, rooting it in that sort of 7th century royal golden age of Northumbria. Everything has an Old English kind of version of it. So all our signage in the building has an Old English translation of it. We have our members, who are our Corenkyn, who are our chosen family, and our Corengyst, who are our chosen guests. So our Corenkyn are our founder members. So that is a bottle of whiskey every year for 8 years, access to all our events, free tours, access to hosting things there. We have Corenkyn nights at different times of the year, and our gatherings, all of that for that, because they are literally have become part of the family, made that choice to be part of it, and we treat them as such, and they very much seem to treat us the same way. It's an incredible time every time the Corenkyn members get together, because they've made friends with each other through that as well. They've met new people. You put on an event, they'll all book it straight away, which is really, reassuring and really sort of affirming when you do stuff like that as well, because you think, oh, well, we're doing the right thing because it's appealing to them. And then our Corengyst are our sort of annual members, so annual pass, so they get free access to tours and things for a year and discounts and exclusive access to a bottle that they can also have. And they're also a wonderful community who come to everything. So it's kind of, I went to a great talk a couple of years ago about communities in business and in museums and stuff. And because historically everybody talked about community. Are you serving your community? And this talk was really interesting because it was about, well, we're all members of multiple communities. You know, we might live in the same place and that's the community you live or you're part of in living there, but you go out and do other activities. And that's what I think of when we have the Corengyst and the Corenkyn and our wider visitors, is they're all overlapping, intersecting communities that where it's great for us to be part of for them and help them and to welcome them in and to give a space where these people can meet each other and come together and have a great time.
An interesting thing for me as well is around like the language around everything, because again, it's authentic, it's all Anglo-Saxon words.
Yeah.
So what does Ad Gefrin mean?
It means by the hill of the goats. So we know a lot of the history of this period from Bede, who lived at Jarrow and Wearmouth, about 100 years after the time of Ad Gefrin, wrote the first great history. So he's the first great historian of the English world and writes this history of the English peoples and writes particularly about Northumbria because that's where he's living. And so we know some of the things that happened there, and that's how we know the name. So he describes it as by the hill of the goats. So that is, Yevering itself is the hill that's next to it, and still today is covered in wild Cheviot goats. Like it is just, there's just goats everywhere up there. And so it's part of the kind of space and the power that it is.
And you have some fantastic celebrations as well. I mean, you mentioned you have these sort of Corenkyn evenings and things like that, but you also have a sort of biannual
gatherings. The gatherings. Yeah. So we have those. We have one in Lammas. So we do everything seasonally.
Yeah.
So we track the Anglo-Saxon seasons because it's still relevant today, and it helps with that sort of sustainability and seasonality and all the things that people are interested in now. They're interesting because it is actually deeply rooted. It's how the world operates. So the Anglo-Saxon world split into different seasons: Lent and Easter, Midsummer. But then Lammas, which is harvest time. So that's the time bringing in the harvest. And Lammas was the first festival of that where everybody would break bread and share bread and the first grains of the harvest, you'd make things out of it. And then we have one for Yule, which is the start of, well, Christmas is part of wider Yule, which runs from November until January. So we have gatherungs for both of those where we do big outdoor celebrations, festivals, bringing people together from the wider sort of communities, family of it all.
So people will have seen, if they've been up this year, quite a spectacular
goat. Yes. So because it's the hill of the goats, so this is the thing of Yule. It's a festival in Anglo-Saxon England. It's also a festival in Scandinavia. So modern Scandinavian Yule people will think of. Things like the Yule log and the Christmas tree are things we've still sort of held on to or reinvented from those traditions. There was also a tradition of making straw goats, different thing, and they were sort of seen as part of that Christian story of the run up to Advent and Nativity. So you would put them around the house. They were like sort of goodwill tokens, and they were part of sort of heralding St. Nicholas coming in and leaving gifts in your house. Yeah. Same sort of thing as gonks are also in that world. If people have bought gonks, they're like all of the same sort of thing. Because you had that tradition, and because it was the hill of the goats, because Cheviot goats, goats sort of figure in all of the things we do. We decided to build a 6-meter high goat out of straw. As you do, to celebrate Yule, to celebrate Christmas. So it's part of that sort of building on a tradition of things that possibly happened 400 years ago, sort of bringing them back to life now.
And it comes back to that thing around community, doesn't it? It makes it part of, it's not just a building in the community, it's part of the community, and it's for the local people to have an appreciation of where they are actually living and what's going on and what would have gone on in years gone by.
Exactly, and connecting it to kind of the best of Northumbrian sort of culture and tradition more broadly. So we do quite a lot around that. And actually, if you go on the tours, we have music by Catherine Tickell, we have a lot of sort of Northumbrian folk music, Northumbrian pipes, contemporary renditions of that. So when we do these festivals and gatherings, it's also what is modern Northumbrian folk and acoustic and sort of musical output now, and how do we give a space for that for people who may not encounter it. You know, there's people who very much are in that world, and it's an amazing world and I love it, but it's how do we help in the other people that we're exposing this to understand actually Northumbria is really vibrant, and that, I mean Northumbria in the northeast as a whole, culturally, and really creative, and how do we celebrate the best of it in the way that we can do in the community.
So what's next then? What other things can we look forward to happening?
So building on the Gadarungs, building on that. So more of that, more Festival of Archaeology in the summer. We do that as well. So we celebrate that side of it. Our spirit products. So we're looking forward to the single malt whiskey coming out. Where we do our gin. We've got our blends. We have sort of cask editions of our blends every year. So we've got another couple of those coming out this year coming. We also have our whiskey cream liqueur, which is our big thing.
My dad's favourite.
It's everybody's favourite, honestly. It's great. So I love that product.
Better than the one that begins with B, I'm told.
We don't talk about that one. This one's much better. This one's legitimately made with all of the natural products that you want in it.
Yeah. No, well, apparently it's very good.
Yeah.
And what about you personally? Well, I mean, this is your passion.
Yeah.
Is this just sort of, you know, if you look back at your younger self, is this your dream job?
It's amazing that, I mean, I've always thought with this, my life has been a sort of a journey, I think, as everybody's is. But to end up in the position, the opportunity that I can do this and sort of try and get that passion across to people, I feel incredibly fortunate to be here. For me, it's about communicating the stories. So I had the chance in my life that I would have gone off and become, you know, a university academic. Become an archaeologist and do that. But I realized for me that sort of lecturing and that sort of teaching, that sort of stuff just wasn't the way. I enjoy museums, I enjoy visually communicating stuff, and I enjoy this sort of conversation. Actually communicating it to somebody stood up and chatting about it. That's not, I need to teach a load of undergraduates who are worried about their debt and all of the other things that are there and all of the pressures on that. So to be in a place where I can keep kind of telling that story and kind of think about new and exciting things that go with it, and what do we find out next? How do we work with organisations like the Gefrin Trust, who sort of own the archaeological site, but how do we get more engagement around the museum? How do we get more engagement around the learning programme? How do we find out more archaeologically? How can I go out and do more research? And how do we communicate? That's the kind of stuff that I just really enjoy. And also because it's then finding about the different stories, the other stories, the things that might not have been there. That if you're in an academic environment or somewhere like that, you can't really pursue your own research interests. You've got to do what needs to be done. What
was the most surprising thing, given all of your vast knowledge about this sort of, about the Anglo-Saxon people, what was the most surprising thing that came up when you were investigating and working out what you were doing?
Do you know what I think the thing was we created that Great Hall. We created this, for those who haven't been, the Great Hall, we have a sort of a film in there. One that's set in the life of and the court of King Edwin and Queen Ethelbert, and one in the time of King Oswald and Queen Cunobor. That is about 15 years apart between the two scenes. And you meet everybody from the sort of King and the Queen down to the slaves. They had slavery then. There was a whole conversation about that. And it's not transatlantic sort of slavery in that sense, or modern slavery. It's sort of it's a particular relationship, almost a bit like sort of working in a country house in the 19th century. Servants, but slightly with that layer of slavery on it. What I found most surprising about all of that is I had these I just had preconceptions of it's 1400 years ago, and all of these characters like Bede and Cuthbert and all these people kind of all lived in my head in this sort of same time space. And only when creating those great big films did I realise how long that period of time was and the generations you're dealing with, that who's alive when and who's interacting with who. And my pet research project that's come out of that is Queen Ethelbert, because she's this fabulous, she's just a fabulous woman in general, I think. But she marries King Edwin. She's come over, so her mother's French, Frankish, who brings over the Christian conversions to Kent. So she's born in Kent. Then she goes to East Anglia and she meets King Edwin, who was a Northumbrian king in exile. So he comes back. This is all very Game of Thrones, right? So he comes back and takes the kingdom. He's been supported in that. And part of the deal that she has is she'll marry him, but only if he converts to Christianity and she can bring her bishop with her. So she'd been at the main royal palace in Kent, which is really over the top. She'd then been in East Anglia and seen the great court of Rendlesham, which is where all the material in the Sutton Hoo ship burial, for anybody who might know that, that's in the British Museum. It's sort of the high point of Anglo-Saxon material that we have. It's got a great big helmet and swords and shields. She's seen that, so she's seen the bling from that. Then she's in Northumbria. Then she oversees the rebuilding of the palace at Ad Gefrin and the palace at York, and the capital moves around, in Bamburgh. Then her husband's killed in battle by a pagan king, so she flees. And she flees with her young daughter, and then she goes back to Kent. And then in Kent, she builds an enormous monastery at Lyminge, and then rules that for 35 years as basically a royal court. So this woman has been at every single significant and important site, and I had no concept that she would have been at any of them. She just didn't exist. I don't think she exists in anybody's mind.
Right.
But she's like this major, significant woman who is in formative parts of English history. And it's that she's just that classic example of, because she's a woman, she doesn't get a story told. It's all through the eyes of the kings that are around her, when actually she's fundamental in major decisions and how that affect us still.
That's brilliant that you can shine a light on that, and you can say this is the hidden history. And I think we're only realising now there's a lot of hidden history, particularly around women, you know, in science, in politics, in all sorts of areas where there was a major influence, but it just wasn't written about, because most of the people who were the scholars were men.
Yes, exactly. And they're only writing it up to the sort of 50s, 60s. Like, it's very much written from a particular perspective, telling a particular history.
Like you say, it's the battles and the
kings and battles and that sort of stuff, because that's what's formative, not thinking actually the long sort of history and story of this is there's 10 years between these battles, and that woman's running that whole kingdom really in the background while he's off doing all of these things. And she's at all these other things. So to bring those stories out, for me, are the most important bits of it. I find the most interesting.
Well, it is to me as well, not just because I'm a woman, but because it's the human stories, it's the sort of the relatable side. You know, I don't go to battle, and not many people I know do. No. But I do work as a woman in an organisation, in a leadership position. We can relate to those things a little bit more. I think it's the humanity. I think what's really come through in this conversation to me is around the real desire for this to be a community, for it to be a family, but also the desire to tell the stories, and don't just tell the obvious stories, tell the hidden stories. And I think that's a great talent that you've got as a family. And, you know, I mean, Eileen's not here today, but I know she has played a major role in the development of this as well. And whenever I speak to either you or Eileen, the passion that you both have for it is incredible. And I'm sure that is something that will ensure that this does last. Yeah. Because it's infectious, that passion, and you can see it when you go into Ad Gefrin, you can see it, that you've ignited it in the other people in there. So, you know, I have no doubt that you will still be there in 100 years' time. We won't be sitting talking about it.
Unless we're sat in wheelchairs.
Yeah. 100 years' time, I think that's probably going to stretch it. But I'm absolutely delighted that you've come on today to share some of those stories, and share the story of behind the scenes of that amazing building that's in Wooler. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Fear Less, Do More, brought to you by Square One Law. If you found today's conversation inspiring or interesting, we've added a recommendation for what to listen to next. That's either on the screen now or in the show notes. Take care, and we'll see you next time.